Most marriages don't fall apart because of one big fight or one tragic mistake. They fade quietly, slowly, over time, through days filled with silence, routines filled with stress, and hearts filled with unspoken needs. Sometimes, we forget that love needs to be spoken aloud. It needs to be heard, not just assumed. So today, I want to walk with you through 10 healing phrases, 10 simple, everyday sentences that have the power to bring your marriage back to life. You don't need grand speeches or perfect timing. You just need to mean it when you speak. Let's begin with the very first one. Part 1. I'm here for you, always. Picture this. Your spouse walks through the door after a long, exhausting day. Their shoulders are heavy, their eyes are tired, and their silence is louder than any complaint. You want to help, but you don't know how. In that moment, one of the most healing things you can say is, I'm here for you, always. No fixing, no advice, just presence. In a marriage, safety is not built by solving every problem, it's built by being consistently present. Saying, I'm here for you, reminds your partner that they're not walking alone. It's like reaching across a storm and offering a hand, not to pull them out, but to sit with them until the storm passes. I once spoke with a woman named Claire, who had been married for 12 years. Her husband, James, was going through a rough time at work. He felt like a failure, and he began shutting down emotionally. One night, Claire simply sat next to him, placed her hand over his, and whispered, You don't have to say anything. I'm just here. James later told me that moment didn't fix anything overnight, but it reminded him that he was loved even when he had nothing to give. That's the power of showing up, with your words and your heart. Part 2. Tell me about your day. How are you feeling? We often ask, How was your day, out of habit, but this version is different. Tell me about your day. How are you feeling? Invites vulnerability. It opens the door wider. It says, I want to hear more than the surface stuff. I want to know what's inside your heart. Imagine a husband who's been distracted lately, caught up in meetings, deadlines, and notifications. His wife starts to feel invisible. One evening, instead of scrolling through his phone, he sits down beside her and says, Tell me about your day. How are you feeling? No interruptions, just eye contact and genuine curiosity. That simple shift tells her, You matter more to me than the noise out there. Listening is one of the purest forms of love. When you ask with care and wait with patience, your partner begins to feel emotionally safe. And safety is where intimacy begins. The healing comes not from the question alone, but from what follows, your stillness, your attention, and your willingness to just be there. Part 3. I'm sorry, I was wrong. This one's tough. Admitting fault feels like surrender, especially when we feel justified in our pain. But in marriage, humility is not weakness, it's strength in its most graceful form. I'm sorry, I was wrong. These words don't just end arguments, they open hearts. I met a couple, Derek and Melissa, who nearly separated after years of unspoken resentment. One night, during a counseling session, Derek finally said, I know I've made it hard to talk to me. I'm sorry, I shut down because I didn't know how to respond. But that's not fair to you. For the first time in years, Melissa cried, not from anger, but from relief. Because when someone owns their fault without excuses, it tells the other person, your pain is valid, and I care enough to take responsibility. We're all going to mess up. We'll say things we regret. But saying, I'm sorry, with sincerity and no defensiveness, that's how we begin to heal what's been broken. Thank you for everything you do. Gratitude isn't just a nice gesture, it's emotional oxygen for a marriage. The longer we live with someone, the easier it is to overlook the things they do, the groceries they buy, the laundry they fold, the bills they pay, the kids they soothe at 2 a.m. But when you pause and say, Thank you for everything you do. Something softens in the air between you. Take Eric and Hannah, for example. They were juggling work, 2 young kids, and barely any sleep. Hannah told me that one evening. Eric looked at her and said, "I know I haven't said this enough. But thank you. You do so much for our family. And I don't take it for granted." She said it felt like someone finally saw her, like all the invisible weight she carried mattered. Appreciation is the antidote to resentment. When you speak gratitude out loud, you're not just acknowledging the action, you're acknowledging the effort, the intention, the love behind it, and that changes everything. Part 5. You matter to me. In the rush of daily life, it's surprisingly easy to feel forgotten, even when you're married. Especially during stressful seasons, people begin to wonder, do I still matter to them? Or am I just part of the routine? That's why this phrase, "you matter to me," carries such deep healing power. It's simple, but it reaches the root. A wife named Elise once shared that after years of managing the household, she felt more like a task manager than a woman. Her husband, Adam, noticed the sadness in her eyes and one evening said, "You matter to me, not just for what you do, but for who you are. I see you." That sentence, she said, broke something open in her heart. She started to believe again that she was more than a role, she was still a person worth loving deeply. Say this when you notice your partner withdrawing. Say it even if you think they already know. Because sometimes, the heart forgets until it hears it again. Part 6. Let's figure this out together. There are moments in every marriage when challenges arise: financial stress, parenting disagreements, health struggles, emotional distance, and it's tempting to drift into a mindset of me versus you. But healing begins when we shift from opposition to alliance. Saying, "Let's figure this out together," instantly changes the atmosphere. It turns conflict into collaboration. It tells your partner, "You're not the problem. The problem is the problem, and we're on the same team." I remember one husband, Michael, who was constantly arguing with his wife Sarah about money. He would criticize her spending habits, she would shut down. Then one day, after a tough counseling session, he looked at her and said, "I don't want to fight you anymore. I want us to find a way that works, for both of us. Let's figure it out together." That simple sentence disarmed her. It no longer felt like a battle. It felt like a partnership. In marriage, we don't need to have all the answers right away. But we do need to know we're not alone in the questions. That's the power of let's. Part 7. I love the way you. Over time, it's easy to generalize affection. "I love you" becomes routine. But healing often lives in the details. When you say, "I love the way you crinkle your nose when you laugh," or "I love the way you talk to our kids when they're upset," it tells your partner, "I still notice you. I still delight in who you are." This kind of specific appreciation rekindles emotional intimacy. It reminds your spouse that they are seen, not just as a partner, but as a person with unique quirks, gifts, and beauty. I once heard a man say to his wife, "I love the way your eyes light up when you talk about your garden. It makes me want to slow down and really listen." Her entire posture changed. She smiled in a way she hadn't in weeks. That moment, though small, built a bridge back to connection. Because so often, what we long for isn't perfection, it's to be noticed. Deeply and specifically. Part 8. You were right. Admitting your partner was right doesn't make you weak, it makes you wise. So often, pride blocks us from offering the very words that could bring us closer. "You were right" isn't about giving up power. It's about honoring insight, affirming perspective, and breaking the cycle of defensiveness. Imagine a couple navigating a tough parenting decision. The wife had insisted their teenage son needed firmer boundaries. The husband disagreed until the consequences became clear. One evening, he looked at her and simply said, "You were right. I should have listened sooner." She didn't gloat, she softened, because those 3 words weren't just about being correct, they were about being respected. In a healthy marriage, both voices matter, and when we affirm one another's wisdom, we create a space where trust grows and pride fades. Part 9. I believe in you. Everyone, no matter how strong, needs encouragement. Life will knock us down. We'll face rejection, failure, disappointment, and in those moments, there's nothing more healing than hearing your spouse say, "I believe in you." It's a declaration that says, even if the world doubts you, I don't. Even if you doubt yourself, I won't. There was a husband named Jared who had just lost his job. He was crushed, ashamed, afraid, and convinced he'd let his family down. One night, sitting on the edge of their bed, his wife Rachel reached over, took his hand, and said, "You are more than your job. I believe in you, and I always will." He told me later it was the first time he believed he'd bounce back. Because love, when spoken, can breathe life back into weary bones. These 4 words, I believe in you, can be a lifeline. Say them often, say them when they're least expected, because your voice might be the one that lifts them again. Part 10. I choose you, every day. Love is not just a feeling. It's a decision, made again and again, even when things are hard. Saying, "I choose you," isn't about romance alone. It's about commitment. It's about standing in the ordinary, messy, beautiful middle of real life and declaring, "I'm not going anywhere." There's a couple I admire, married 42 years. They've survived cancer, lost a child, nearly divorced, and yet, every morning, the husband still whispers to his wife over coffee, "I choose you," and she always smiles, like it's the first time. Because those words remind them both, this love is still alive. Still worth choosing. When we say, "I choose you," we remind our spouse that they're not a convenience or a habit. They're a gift, one we've never stopped saying yes to. Conclusion. Small words, big love, lasting healing. At the end of the day, we don't need perfect relationships. We just need 2 people who are willing to speak love aloud. Who are willing to pause, lean in, and say the things that matter, especially when it's hard. So maybe tonight, before bed, you whisper, "I'm here for you," or maybe tomorrow, you take their hand and say, "Tell me how you're feeling." One sentence at a time. One choice at a time. Healing begins again, because sometimes, the words that save your marriage aren't dramatic declarations. They're the soft, steady ones, the ones that say, "I see you. I hear you. I'm not giving up on us." And maybe that's all we ever needed to hear. If something in this video touched your heart, please like and subscribe to stay connected. This channel isn't just about giving advice, it's about reminding you that love, in all its forms, is worth fighting for, whether you're in love, in doubt, or in the middle of rebuilding something fragile. You're not alone. Share your thoughts in the comments below. We're here with you, and we look forward to seeing you again in the next episode.